Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It is way too hot for that suit. So if you excuse me, I took the shirt and tie off. It is way too hot. All right, we have a lot to fill in to this hour before Kurt comes on at the top of the second hour. So let's get right to it. We'll talk a little bit about what the new polls are showing us. Also, I got something I want to throw in there. And then we'll talk a little bit about Spain. There was a lot of interest in Spain. I don't always do European elections, but Spain did intrigue me because even though PP and Vox underperformed, especially Vox, there's just no doubt about it. And we could talk about why that is a little bit. Spain has been run by socialists for years, since the general dictator was ousted from power. It was not supposed to be, especially in the modern era, an area where populism could take root. And yet, populist right-wing forces won about, they won a plurality for sure, but they won most of the vote. However, what happens next is a little bit tricky because of PP's alliance with Vox. It's, like you could look to Junta has 7 seats, right? Or Junta, however you say. They probably will not align with Vox. And PP kind of bit themselves in the butt making some of these alliances and openly, and even though the new leader is supposed to be more moderate, openly extending their hand in some of the areas. Mercy is a great example, where they outperformed Vox and took some seats away from Vox, but didn't do good enough in the areas they were expected to do in order to keep their end of the coalition. So they kind of hurt Vox in some areas. And even though they won Madrid, they won, some of these areas. Socialists did a lot better in Catalonia than expected and other parts of Spain, which are, if you've ever been to these places, I don't know what else to call it, like the Canaries and Catalonia. This is where uber rich people who, unless there's a total global collapse, will never be hurt by anything. And when I say total global collapse, I don't mean Great Recession stuff. I mean like the end of the global order. These people are so rich, they spend, a month at a time in $5,000 a night hotels. Like, it's ridiculous. So they are totally separated from the rest of the country, including their own citizens in a city like Madrid, where they even said enough. This is the problem with what Robert Kennedy actually has been talking about, is this very cushy, soft socialism for the rich, and then this very brutal fascism for everyone else below them, which is posing as a free market. And it's just not true. So we'll see. There were a lot of mail-in votes, shocker, and a lot of people waited until the last minute to vote because of the extreme heat. All right, but before we get into this, I got to put this up. I'm going to show this to my friend Kurt when he comes on. Me. From the New York Times. Since they're using articles from the New York Times and the Washington Post to attack me. From the New York Times. Let's just draw our attention to the highlighted area. Mr. DeSantis has privately forecast that the now twice indicted Mr. Trump would struggle as his legal troubles mounted But the governor continues to poll in a distant second place nationally. Now, that wouldn't be a confirmation of everything I've been telling you for months now, would it? Rich, how did you know? And thank you, Jack Poso, for tweeting about this. He said Barris has been attacked relentlessly by Team DeSantis for making these claims. I've been saying them for months. Even before that, I knew that he was running for president when he said he was not running for president. Way back. And then he ran to favorable news outlets, if you can even call them that. Florida Voice Live, whatever the name of that thing is. FloridaPolitics.com is a great source of news. Listen, if you're right wing, you're not always going to agree with it, but I happen to very much, I always did like the work they did. And they at least took his denial with a grain when I said he's meeting with McCarthy donors, he's meeting with Paul Ryan's people, he's meeting with people in the Bush circles, he's running. I'm telling you, he's running. Rich, how did you know? And by the way, they lied. He lied. And he made it out like I was claiming that Kevin McCarthy, and Paul Ryan were secretly meeting in like some shadowy room filled with smoke to plot Trump's demise. Anytime a politician fabricates or exaggerates a claim made against them that is true, and they don't want people to know, and then denies the fabrication or the exaggeration, that's when you know they're lying. He was lying, of course. And I was telling you the truth. I was also telling you the truth about how this entire campaign is built around the concept that they'll be able to win as the replacement, the de facto replacement that MAGA will accept. That has always been Paul Ryan and Kevin McCarthy's general feeling on the topic. MAGA will accept Ron DeSantis. That's why, despite what Joe Walsh told The Guardian this weekend, that's why they coalesced behind Ron DeSantis so quickly, because they looked at the rest of the field and they said, no one else will be accepted by MAGA. At least with DeSantis, we have a chance that Trump's voters shut up and vote for him anyway. 1 second. Of course, that was always a very big secret to keep. And people like me are never going to keep it from you. Probably why they hate me so much. So how did I know? I knew about this the same way I knew he was running a meeting with those people. Because those people told me. You want the big secret? Here's the big secret. Your donors call me because they don't believe your pollster. Your donors call me because they trust me and they don't trust your pollster. When donors give to a candidate, they are making an investment in their future. Months ago, 6 months ago, it may have sounded like a plausible idea, a plausible path to victory. But now, and recently, it is not. So while he has always said to people, to donors, and his campaign people have always said to donors, we think Trump will run into political trouble with the indictments. This has become now a central talking point behind closed doors when donors call and say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think you're going to lose. What are you going to do to turn this around? This is now the central claim to donors. He's not going to make it through these indictments. But he is. He is. There's more coming. There's Georgia. There's sedition. He's not going to make it through these indictments. The problem DeSantis now has, which you could see in the Suffolk poll, it's not just big data poll anymore, although we were first. It's in the Suffolk poll. It's in the Mitchell Research poll. Mitchell Research, of course, is a well-known Michigan-based pollster. And I guarantee you it's in the Fox poll that they refuse to release. Whoops, excuse me. I guarantee you if they poll the general elections, we will see from the polling they did over the weekend, the head-to-heads against Biden I guarantee you they're going to show the same thing we show, the same thing Suffolk shows. And if they don't, they're just full of crap because it's so clear. You'd have to be blind and dumb and deaf not to see and hear it. The jig is up. And there is a significant chunk of Trump's vote that will not vote for him. Could at one time they have gotten these people to vote for him? Maybe, folks. I'm skeptical. Why? Because in 22, many of them said, I'll go out and vote, and they did not. Adam Laxalt lost because of it. Because he had people that are running DeSantis' campaign right now, including the door knockers, supposedly knocking on doors for him, supposedly reaching out to the new Trump coalition. And they weren't, and they didn't. And even if they were trying, they wouldn't know how. They don't know how to talk to these people. And they weren't doing it anyway, as we all know. They were gambling at Caesars instead of knocking on Hispanic neighborhood doors and finding those pro-Hispanic, pro-Trump Hispanic votes, these new votes. So he underperformed in Clark and he lost. And he underperformed in Washoe. Which, even though he had a slight lead in a poll we did, 8 weeks before the election, something like that. Going back and looking at it, you could actually see, just like you could see it everywhere else. So, everyone wants to dismiss our poll. Here's the Fox poll. The only difference between the Fox poll and our poll is that we have Trump a few points higher, we have DeSantis a few points higher. But the margin is basically the same. Trump plus 30. Trump plus 30, Trump plus 32. Very, very similar. As you can see right there, white evangelicals, Trump is squashing him. Despite the Bob Vanderplatts and despite who is on Twitter right now saying that this is not true. Okay, Bob, we're all wrong, Bob. You're right. You ever think for a second that they just aren't listening to you? They don't believe you. You got this guy to run so far to the right, he is totally unelectable in a general election, and he's still losing evangelicals to Trump. Even among those, and folks, here we go. You ready? Even among those who say that they are voting on abortion this year. And by the way, with evangelicals, that's only 19%. The rest of them, what do they care about? Beating Biden and the deep state, the border, the economy. And that's why Trump has a huge lead, because on the border and the economy, Trump squishes everybody like a bug, like a little maggot. What's that maggot doing? Oops. But even among those who do say that social issues like abortion and wokeness and other stuff are their top concerns, it's Trump by 5. So you got this guy to move so far to the right, he can't be elected dog catcher in the state of Michigan. He's down by 13 points now. All to lose the state of Iowa anyway? You've got to be kidding me. Super genius. Let's look at another genius. All right. This I cannot believe that this is even printed on a website. But it is, because this is how stupid these people are. I don't have a whole lot of time, so I got to go through each of these ones that I want to go with you. Never Trumpers get brutal wake-up calls. Republican candidates flounder. Let's just keep going down here. Here we go. As if we're missing the wisdom of Jeb Bush's former advisors. He's with Tim Miller, who was the communications director for Jeb Bush in 2016. Here's his take on why everyone's losing to Trump. They're experiencing a brutal wake-up call that the party is not interested in hearing critiques of Trump. Well, then obviously you could end it there, and that may be like a half smart statement. But no. The Trump challengers' candidacies have been astonishingly poor and learned nothing for in 2016. And you think, well, this is a guy who lost. Maybe he gets it now. No, he doesn't. When the leading candidate gets indicted and all of his opponents, besides Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson, just echo his fake persecution complex talking points, it's going to be hard to beat him. If I didn't have family members who literally were on the spectrum, I would mock him in a very different way right now. You have to wonder if some of these people are mentally handicapped. You have to wonder whether their mother dropped them on their head as a baby more than once, and that's why they're so stupid. Chris Christie couldn't even show up, along with your boy Ron, to a Turning Point USA conference. Asa Hutchinson, despite Turning Point people telling thousands in attendance, be respectful, be respectful, be respectful. Despite that, booing Asa Hutchinson. And you think that's the key to beating Donald Trump? Are you on acid or something? What's your major malfunction? Of course, it's not a fake persecution complex. It's a real persecution complex. And that's what, more importantly, that's not what the People's Pundit believes. That's what the voters in the Republican Party believe. As we're going to show you with Tip in a second, that's what voters who are independent believe. Tip, Harvard Harris. These are solid pollsters with solid track records. Normal Americans simply don't view it like Tim Miller. And for that matter, normal Americans don't view it like Ron DeSantis. Apparently. Not even apparently. I think it's very clear by now. Very clear. Let me read something in total here, because I think it's that important that it's worth reading in total. And then we'll move on to Spain. By the way, South Carolina, Fox also dropped the ball. The problem for all those other candidates, not that Trump is basically at 50, which is higher than the last one. And Nikki Haley is now in second, and DeSantis has fallen to third. And you know what? Let me just say this. I don't want to hear anymore about all the devilish, evil people around Ron DeSantis who convinced him to do this, and poor Ron DeSantis. He's a grown-ass man with a grown-ass wife who wanted to be Jackie Kennedy. Enough of that. He knew what he was doing. He's a big boy. The truth is, Ron DeSantis is too good to be vice president in his mind. Go ahead and say it, Steve. Say it. You already blasted your mouth on the Twitter Spaces anyway. You're already on the block. You might as well continue with your honesty streak. Vice presidency isn't good enough for Ron DeSantis. I'm not a number 2 kind of guy. Tip Insights editorial board. Biden's relentless lawfare against Trump could backfire. Public opinion in the country is everything. Abraham Lincoln. This is a fantastic article. In 1887, eminent thinker Wallace F. Campbell, writing in the North American Review, introduced the often used term of today, the court of public opinion. As cataloged by the Library of Congress, Campbell wrote, "It is commonly supposed that courts, juries, and counsel constitute the proper tribunal ordained by the people for the trial of alleged crimes. It has remained for the author of the court of public opinion to assume that such is not the case. and that the machinery of justice exists merely for the purpose of automatically registering the prejudiced decision of a self-constituted tribunal, a trial court whose judgment is infallible and from whose decision no appeal lies, is a very unsafe tribunal for the people of this country to adopt. Fantastic. And get a drink of water. Campbell may well have had the wisdom to envision what could happen 136 years later and be talking about President Biden's and the left's relentless campaign to send former President Trump to jail. Attorney General Merrick Garland and his aggressive prosecutor, Jack Smith, are expending all federal resources to build a case that, under the right circumstances of a biased jury and a sympathetic bench, could result in a judgment that might appear infallible, as Campbell said, but the eminent thinker warns that such an outcome would be hard for voters to embrace. Indeed, the proceedings in the classified documents case are well underway. Judge Cannon has already set a trial date of May 2024. I'm sorry, little buddy, I don't have Skittles. Little kid just came in like, I want some Skittles. I'm sorry, buddy, I don't have Skittles, but you did mess the camera up. Anyway, Judge Cannon has already set a trial date of May 2024, just 6 months before the next U.S. presidential election. Some conservatives complain that such a date is too dangerous for President Trump. What if he is found guilty of at least one charge? Democrats could not contain their glee. Running against a criminal would be the surest way to return President Biden to a second term. But the Democrats could be miscalculating big time. What we have seen over the years is that every time the deep state tries to hurt President Trump, his poll numbers rise, and he is able to fundraise even more than before. It is an inexplicable reaction that frustrates Democrats, who fail to understand that most Americans are honest, ethical, and busy individuals. How many times have we talked about this? Committed to caring for their families, attending church, being active in the community. Most voters do not understand the complexities of national security laws, nor do they believe that Trump committed felony violations by participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. Voters may not remember their civics classes, but they know that Trump has always cared about America's standing in the world. From the moment he descended the escalator at Trump Tower in 2015, Trump's brand is that he wants America to win. Even in television interviews in the late 1980s and 90s, Trump's single most consistent grievance against American officials was that they let foreigners take advantage of America and get ahead at the nation's cost. For Trump watchers, the Make America Great Again campaign started more than 30 years ago. So how could such an individual willfully bring harm to America? It is a question that baffles the average voter. And Jack Smith's attempts to prove that Trump obstructed justice ring hollow. On the contrary, voters examine recent history and conclude that the deep state obstructed justice against Trump in every instance since 2015. Russia proved to be a hoax. The first impeachment based on the Trump-Zelensky call was another hoax. Now that stories are being uncovered that Burisma executives allegedly paid the Biden family nearly $10 million in bribes. Trump's request to Zelensky was to investigate those corruption charges, and the average voter would retort, Trump was right, after all. Unsealing the document against President Trump, Jack Smith went to extraordinary lengths to make a point about the universality of laws. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice, and our nation's commitment to the rule of law sets an example for the world. We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more, nothing less. Well, that sounds like a fancy bunch of bullshit to the average voter. But the average voter believes that presidents are unique and the law should apply to them only after granting them significant deference. And I wouldn't even argue. I mean, that is true, but I would add to that it's more. That they're looking now at actual events and hearing about actual events, and what Jack Smith said sounds like what you want people to say, but the sad truth is, people in his position, but the sad truth is, it's bullshit. He doesn't believe it. His entire career is filled with prosecutorial misconduct. The Department of Justice, we now know, thank you to brave IRS and DOJ whistleblowers, is totally corrupt. They let Biden and his son go on actual serious criminal corruption. And they rewrite laws to persecute their political opponents. That is what the average American will see and does see. They may not realize that the Constitution sets aside an entire article, Article 2, to list out presidential powers. But the average voter knows that no one man on earth is as powerful as the United States president. While in office, Trump had access to every secret America held, including the power to press the red button. He had the sole authority to classify or declassify the nation's documents. Trump may no longer be president, but that does not instantly make him a common man the day he left office. If that were the case, why would former presidents be eligible for Secret Service protection for life? Why would they be treated like royalty when they visit foreign countries? This poll is incredible. It's from the Daily Mail. It's a tip poll. 1,341 adults. What they're trying to show you right here is that, in fact, when you look at independents, I mean, Democrats are one thing, but when you look at independents, they are more, and Barnes and I have explained this to you over and over again. Forget about the somewhats, the this, the that. The intensity is what matters. And independents and Republicans are very different. Voters will likely hold with deep skepticism Jack Smith's case against Trump in the January 6 riots as well. We'll wait for those charges to be unsealed before summarizing our view. The bottom line is that Biden is wandering into uncharted territory. The Constitution does not forbid Trump from running for president, even if he is guilty or thrown in prison. President Biden, whose approval ratings are consistently hovering in the 40s, has a tough race against another human being. He has a formidable challenge against a martyr. So formidable that his overzealousness in bringing Trump to justice could make Biden a disastrous one-term president. What they're trying to explain here is that they just did it very eloquently, but a lot of the things we have spoken about already in the past. One being the ending here, the martyr complex. Nelson Mandela returned triumphant for a reason. Netanyahu just ran through reforms in the Knesset to the court's authority for a reason. Netanyahu has returned triumphant. Lula, whether you like him or not, was imprisoned by his political opposition and has returned triumphant. The Mexican president, Obrador, has felt exactly what Donald Trump is dealing with right now, as we have played before. I'm not going to play it again, even though I have the clip right here. And he returned triumphant. They are making Trump into this martyr. And you have to think of it like this. America is supposed to be the beacon of democracy and self-governance, right? The exemplar. This very well could be viewed as America's turn to prove that. People want to be able to pick their own leaders. Regardless of whether a poll could fully pick it up and appreciate it or not, I'm not sure. I'm skeptical. Americans don't like to be told in absolute terms something they can or cannot do. And regardless of whether Trump is this, that, the other thing, or even for that matter, Biden is this, that, the other thing, Hillary Clinton, they feel it's their judgment to make. Now, again, the second part about this is the absolute gross double standard. There is no such thing as 2, 3, whatever tiers of justice. There is only justice or no justice. And now that we are finding out the details of the Biden family's criminal activity and the Department of Justice, including the FBI's willingness to cover it up while they simultaneously twist laws to prosecute a president who is ahead in the polls right now, about to pull a Grover Cleveland 2.0, folks, is not going to look good. Americans are busy. Like the editorial said, they're busy, but they're ethical. They just want to be involved. They want to take care of their families. They're not stupid. Only a blind partisan isn't aware of what is going on in this country right now. Just as only a blind partisan still believes Russia collusion. They are not going to buy this. They're not. All right, let me see. Where do I want to go from here? And we had, by the way, a lot of great feedback from Laura Loomer's interview on Friday. I mean, there's always good feedback and bad feedback, but surprisingly, a significantly positive percentage of feedback. And over the weekend, she dropped yet another video. I mean, she is having an impact without a doubt. And she just dropped something else. Let's look real quick. I want to answer this since we do have some time. I think I can do it. I want to answer people are concerned with Rasmussen. They don't really understand. We report our primary results differently, and so do a lot of other people. And Rasmussen's a little bit weird. So when I got the early results this morning and put it on locals, a lot of people, people are like, "What is this? What? All I see is this." And it's because you got to look at just the column. This is why we do things a little bit different. We want to capture everyone who is eligible and is willing to participate. Nationally, it's challenging. So we go through a number of screens to do it. They're a little bit different. All right. They just choose the Republican primary voter. All right. So everyone's a little different. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying it's confusing. 57% of likely Republicans would vote for Trump. Well, 13% would vote for Governor DeSantis. A little bit strangely, they showed no traction for anybody else. Mike Pence still at 5. Chris Christie is still at 5. Tim Scott's at 4. Haley's at 4. Asa Hutchinson is at 4. And Vivek is at 3. We have very little support for Asa Hutchinson. I strongly suggest the reason why Vivek is at 3 in their poll and Asa Hutchinson is at 4 is mode. I keep telling you this. It's not just, you have to point this out when the media puts out, like Fox News. The reason why they have a lower support level for both DeSantis and Trump is how they poll. There is a built-in both social and response bias in the data collection mode that they have chosen to use. It doesn't matter if they call cell phones and landlines, they're still not giving certain people a comfort level to be honest. So those people say, I don't know, or whatever it may be. And they reach a certain group of people a lot easier than, or a lot, not easier. That's not the way I want it. There are certain groups that are going to answer that collection mode more than others. And unfortunately, we hear a lot about how participation bias in panel polls, because of the, what is the likelihood of certain voters to be online. I think that's absolutely ridiculous compared to, and it's not ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you don't also share those concerns with the phone, because propensity, it's really what we're talking about here. The propensity of somebody to be online, and propensity scoring is used by Harvard and Harris. We do it too, because they have an online component. So they're basically trying to factor for certain groups being online more than others. I actually think that is the correct way to do it. We do that first, propensity modeling, and then we rate weight. So they're doing something very similar, probably why we have very similar results all the time. But IVR, interactive voice response, Rasmussen still uses for a nice chunk. And when we use phone, we do see that people like Asa Hutchinson, who get nothing on peer-to-peer texting and online responses, they get like no support, like literally 0 to 2%. they'll get higher if you're doing it like this. And just for instance, in the Fox poll in Iowa, Asa Hutchinson did get 1%. That's roughly what we had him at. He got 1% in South Carolina. Chris Christie got 2. Mike Pence got 4. Where's Mike Pence in Iowa? 4. Vivek got 6. Because why? Because they are reaching younger people on their cell phones, even though it's live caller. And he would probably have been higher, maybe 8 or so, if they would do things like give them the chance to take an anonymous interview or something, which we do. All right, so in any event, among all likely voters, his lead is only slightly diminished from 62%. We may see a pop again after this next. When Trump says, I'm going to be indicted, he does seem to do a little bit better, but it's when the indictment comes that we really see an initial pop, and then he comes back a little bit. Right now, we haven't gotten those indictments in Georgia. We haven't gotten those new indictments from Jack Smith, although they're very likely to come very soon. That is when we will see either a rise or a decrease in his support. But it's not surprising to me at all that he came down from 62 to 57. Emerson, they had him come back down, but he's still overwhelmingly dominant. And honestly, if you look at those Fox polls, the truth is everybody is screwed. They're screwed. There's too many second choices for Trump. It doesn't matter if you consolidate it behind the wrong candidate at this point. There was no right candidate. He's above 50. By the time we get to South Carolina, several of these people are not going to be there. Look at the second choices for like Burgums and the Pences. Look at them. He may not even be the top second choice for some of these candidates, but it simply doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's the top second choice of Ron DeSantis voters. He's the top second choice of Tim Scott voters. So what do you plan on doing here? It's stupid. It's getting stupid. The truth is, this is getting dumb. I mean, it's getting dumb. You know, Mitt Romney he lost Iowa. He got his ass kicked in South Carolina. Yet the Murdochs just continued on and on the curvy couch, on and on. Mitt Romney's going to be the nominee. They literally self-prophesized John McCain doing better in New Hampshire than he was supposed to. They delivered him Florida, but that doesn't work anymore. Republicans don't care what Fox News has to say anymore. They don't care. This is dumb. This is getting stupid. Will more indictments work? I mean, probably not after now. Everyone knows you've been counting on indictments. The New York Times reported it. It's out. Do you really think that Republican voters are going to trust you to take down the deep state when you needed the deep state to win? No. This is not 2000 anymore. This is not 2004. This is not 2008. It sure as hell is not 1988. It's not even 2012. It's getting dumb. It's just dumb. There's so many better things we could be talking about. More interesting things that we could be talking about. Like, for instance, this. And I'm not picking on DeSantis here. It's just that they threw all their eggs in his basket. So we're going to have to point out these glaring inconsistencies with what they say and what they actually do and how they perform. Here we go. Oh, you got to love the National Pulse with their graphics, huh? Ron DeSantis' campaign manager, Janera Peck, who just regurgitates everything Brian Griffin had been saying for months. Maybe changes a few words up a little bit. And they're so smart, they steal Trump's slogans. I mean, this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Like, I'm getting tired of it, in case you can't hear it in my voice. I talk to voters every single day, almost every single day. And I don't just pass it off to the call center or my employees. I never will do that. I personally don't conduct every freaking interview. And many people don't even react to an agent. They're not talking with them. A lot of people, as some of you probably know, get a simple text message. Do you not think most people choose to just click on the link and do it online rather than interact with the agent back and forth? But we do try. I'm a prior. When I get you, I'm a prior. And I'm going to choose some people that I think are saying things that we need to hear, like stop and shut up ourselves and listen to. And I'm going to pry. And I read an article like this, and I just think about those interviews, those interactions. Janera Peck admitted this weekend that the Florida governor's anemic bid for the Republican nomination has been, quote, ineffective and has wasted too much money. There is no doubt this has been the biggest waste of money in Republican politics. The comments, ironically, came during yet another billionaire donor summit at the lavish Stein Erickson Lodge in Utah. You can't get a more Trump-hating setting than this. Setting the campaign back a further $87,000. A single night at the cheapest room in the hotel is listed at, how appropriate, $666. You can't make this up. You can't make this up. Peck told the roughly 70-strong reception of high-dollar donors that the team would be slimming down and adopting an insurgent posture. Good luck with that. As the group quaffed cocktails on the terrace adjacent to Utah's famous Twin Peaks. Absolutely beautiful. And I will tell you, this place is gorgeous. It really is. If you're an outdoorsy kind of person, it's like the rich person's attempt at being rustic. All right. Team DeSantis has already started firing staff as their once well-financed operation suffers a cash crunch and continues to slide in their polls. Their latest gimmick, once again, comes right out of the Trump campaign playbook. I'm not kidding. He's right. They're right. Who wrote this article again? I forgot. Excuse me. Well, Jack Montgomery. Well, Mr. Montgomery is 100% correct. Let Ron be Ron, said Nick Eros. Nick, a lobbyist fundraiser present at the event, aping the 27 Trump campaign staff book titled Let Trump Be Trump, of course, by one Corey Lewandowski. Let Ron be Ron, the great American comeback. Can you stop? Honestly, if you wanted to be a nutlicker, you should have just endorsed the guy. Again, this is getting unserious. That's what's got him here. Oh my God, it's verbatim. Corey, are you going to sue? Because this is plagiarism, Corey. They plagiarized you. That's what made him the leader that he is in Florida. No, it's not. Donald Trump made him the leader in Florida. Otherwise, he would have lost. So you, in some insane twist, refuse to acknowledge that with all these stupid little platitudes about being the underdog that you bit off of Brian Griffin. And now we have to hear, what's his name, regurgitate over and over again, just changing a word here and there. You refuse to admit that that is a fact. Yet you bite off everything the guy says and does. I'm being hard for a simple reason. Nobody ever wants to drink light beer. You are only going to drink a light beer when you get fat and you're told that you need to, to slim down a little bit. So you're not gonna drink the light beer unless you're forced to drink the light beer. Everybody knows they want it bold, baby. You feel me? Nobody wants the bootleg version of the movie. They want the full definition, original OG. The DeSantis team has already attempted multiple reboots. This isn't a reboot. This is we're running out of money. And we're going to pretend it's a reboot because we're running out of money. And we have no choice. but to slim it down. Prominent boosters of the Florida governor, including Fox bosses Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, already looked set to drop him in favor of another Donald Trump alternative, such as Glenn Youngkin, with sources saying they can, quote, smell a loser. Glenn Youngkin was for weeks running around saying, I told you so, told you so. However, from what we have heard, the Murdochs are just resigned that Donald Trump is the nominee, and they will try to help Joe Biden. So there we have it. With 15 minutes left, let's talk about what happened. Well, we basically did talk about what happened in Spain, didn't we? We basically did. I'm not sure there's any more reason to do this. I mean, it is what it is. They underperformed. Probably because of the heat and the probably because of the heat, and there were more mail-in ballots, which came in. The liberals, they're not liberals. The socialists did better with the mail-in ballots, and they did better in areas like Catalonia. Let's see if I can actually show you a map real quick. I had one up here. Give me 1 second, okay? Because we'll give you the seat count. They actually turned out to be pretty correct. Let's see. There's the live results. Okay, so here we have it. Yeah, because they'll be able to show you the map and everything. That's cool. We don't do maps. I mean, The Guardian did a great job. You want to look at usually The Guardian does a pretty good job at foreign elections if you're interested. All right, so voters in Spain on Sunday went to the polls for a snap election called by the Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. The opposition People's Party hoped to win enough seats to form a governor, if need be, in coalition with the far-right Vox. Okay, here's the 50% mark. As you can see, they did fall short. Vox used to have 50. They were projected to have 50-plus seats. That did not happen, or a range of 45 to 50. PPP was ranged to have upwards of 150, and that didn't happen. So PSOE and Sumar did just better. Here, let's look at the map. PP is blue, and then PSOE is in the red. As you can see, in places like Catalonia, they had a very, very strong showing. In the Canary Islands, they did split. All right, and then look at Murcia. This is where Vox actually had a foothold in 19, but PP's kind of like gamble to the People's Party's gamble to bring some of these people into the fold. What they tried to do, and I'm just going to be clear, they tried to put a more moderate face using the old strategy from the prior leader, which was, yeah, we're going to shake hands with Vox, which is the supposed far right. When you actually run down what they are, folks, they're not what you would consider far right. I mean, they were a fringe party until 19 when they won first 24 and then 52 parliamentary seats in successive elections. They said they're ultra nationalists outfit, right? They're anti-immigration, they're anti-abortion, and they're anti-devolution. They have already formed pacts with the PP in some region, right? Alberto Nunez, and I'm not going to butcher his name, which I will, Santiago Abascal is the leader of Vox. They're the center-right party, the traditional. And they moved further to the right under its leader, Pablo Casado, right? Who, in an attempt to outflank Vox, had established all of these alliances and also new, basically, party platforms. But Alberto is not that guy. All right. And what he really tried to do, it says he styles himself as a moderate. He is a moderate. But he has given his blessing to regional pacts with Vox and is likely need to form a coalition. Well, it's not going to happen now. The problem is there's only one right-wing party after those two. And I just don't see the Together for Catalonia joining forces with PP and Vox, because even to them, Vox is unacceptable. That is what they would need in order to do it, because at last I checked, they had 7 seats. They sure do. So there you have it. That could technically be enough. You need the magic number is 176 in Spain. So at this point, about 7 seats shy. Like actually 7 seats shy. It will sadly, and I'm just telling you this is sadly because it's so sad that so many of these people voted for a different direction. It is much easier for Pedro Sanchez to make sure that they get put together a coalition government. They will go and speak to King Philippe. I honestly, guys, the European model just makes me mildly nauseous. They're not like citizens in the sense that Americans are citizens, or at least in our minds. I'm not sure we are now either. But very much like England, they'll meet on August 17th, and King Philippe will then meet party leaders to determine which one could win members of parliament in order to become the next prime minister. And then that candidate would then take part in an investiture debate followed by a vote that requires an absolute majority in Spain's lower house, 176 seats. If the candidate falls short of that number, a second vote will be held 48 hours later, in which only a simple majority, more votes for than against, will suffice. Should that fail, members of parliament have 2 months to appoint a prime minister. When those 2 months are up, parliament will be dissolved and new elections called for at the end of the year. I'm not an expert on Spain's politics. I just don't see that happening. I just don't. I think what's more likely is that the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party will cobble together. They will cobble it together. Exactly, Hector. Exactly. The Junts are together for Catalonia. And they used to be right-wing Christian Democrats in the 80s and 90s, but not anymore. And even with them, like, they have the 7 seats. But there has been so much. I'm sorry, I just saw a comment that made me laugh. There's been so much anti-Vox sentiment that I just don't see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Yeah. Ooh, that's a good comment. There you have it. Oof. Democrats are citizens. Republicans are unindicted subjects. Well, the truth is, folks, Democrats would be wise to snap out of it too, because, at the end of the day, the state has a never-ending appetite to persecute another, because it's the only way that they can justify their regime credibility. So at one point, it is only a matter of time before certain Democrats are on the chopping block. And that's it. That's the way it always goes. Nobody's exempt from history. No one ever will be. No country, no nothing. And that is what will happen to Democrats as well. So it's 12:54. Again, I'm just going to wrap this up with very simple saying this. After Spain lost its military dictatorship, which is what the media would like you. I mean, it was military. After Spain lost its military dictatorship and far leftists took power, they really had basically one party rule, despite the People's Party being there. The center-right party has always been there, and you got to give it to both the PSOE and the People's Party. Remarkable resilience in the face of insurgency. But that's what happens when there's entrenched one party rule, or what is happening in America. That's what happens when it succeeds. It becomes incredibly difficult to cast it off using the normal methods or normal mechanics of so-called democracy. All right. There's only usually one other way to do it. Yeah, Hector, what's your take on it? You live in Spain, don't you? If we have new elections, it will be because of regional Catalonian politics and nothing else. That's exact. I'm not an expert, Hector, but that's the way I see it too. I'd like your input. It's always welcome. That. For those who don't know, he lives there. He knows. I imagine you had better hopes for this election. And I'm curious. You guys have been living under this ridiculous heat wave. Like, I literally had people telling me that turnout was going to be low because it was so damn hot. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. I don't know how true that is, but they were saying it's so hot there are people who just won't come out and vote. I'm not kidding. And that they were providing fans and like units, like AC units, places at polling stations. Is that true? Was it really that hot that they were doing that? Yeah. But I will say this again, for a very long time, it was widely thought that Spain is just a socialist country and that right wing populism could never take root in Spain. Never. And so while they underperformed, which they did, it's still kind of something to behold, you know? I don't live in Spain, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn. Yeah, in some places it is that hot. He's saying, wow, that's incredible. Could you imagine heat affecting the outcome of an election? I mean, my God. I mean, I still think at the end of the day, Hector, what I think is that PP got in Vox's way a little bit. And their attempt to make gains in areas like Murcia turned off some other areas where they could have won more seats and left Vox to win another 10 or 15 in areas that Vox had done well in the last election. And I kind of think they got a little bit too big for their britches. They overplayed their hand and they hurt themselves. The PSOE was the biggest party in Madrid. PP will be the biggest party now. But they could have done better. They absolutely could have done better. In Catalonia, the regional parties did seriously underperformed. So that's another part of it. So, should have tried to be, I don't want to say this, like they should have tried to be a little bit more moderate, maybe. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert in Spain's politics, but it just looks like you should have left Murcia alone and that area alone. Let Vox do what they do there, and then you would have had another 10 seats. And if you would have had another 10 seats because you didn't turn off other people out and around Madrid, I'm just saying. The heat wave was a lie. Maybe. Listen, I never put anything past these sons of you-know-what. Never. So, they could be using the heat wave as an excuse for the 2+ million vote by mails, honestly. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll bring on Kurt Schlichter, who I see has joined us. All right, so let's go to a quick break, and we'll be back after a word from our sponsors, which, of course, is narrated by me. Speaking of the heat, folks, brownouts, extremists, authorities fear they are targeting the U.S. power grid. That's according to Time magazine, not Breitbart or People's Pundit. If just 9 key substations would go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. That's why you need a solar generator. Your life would be frozen in time the moment the power went out. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, medical devices, even your refrigerator. And by the way, I can testify to that. I have a natural gas generator, but you need solar for a backup. This thing is much stronger than I expected it to be. And right now you can go to 4patriots.com and get one. 10% off if you use the code TPP10 at checkout. This code is, of course, for your first purchase only, so make it count. If you're going to get 10% off something, make it a big 10%. That's 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit, TPP10 for 10% off to get your Patriot Power Generator today. And they have a fantastic deal right now with panels and everything. It is definitely the time to do it and get it. Not to mention, we're run by a bunch of idiots. The country is run by a bunch of morons. Does it take extremists to destroy infrastructure, or are we just filled with a bunch of stupid idiots that, like, the circus is in the Congress? These people can't run a hot dog stand, let alone a national government, and to protect its infrastructure and power grid. Yeah, the LA Times has been trying to normalize blackouts and brownouts for years. And Hector, just from the break, I just want to bring this up. Yeah, this is a bad deal. Let me just put this up here because he's 100% right. It's exactly right. Vox lost 500,000 votes, 19 seats but PP didn't get the 19 seats from Vox. Some of those seats went to left-wing parties. Exactly. So it seems to me that the People's Party overplayed their hand. They should have left Vox to do their thing so they could have, listen, what I'm saying is let Vox be more right-wing where it's okay to be more right-wing. And you stay the hell out of it and make sure you just win like crazy in Madrid and around Madrid. And don't get killed in Catalonia like that. Oh, what do you think, Kurt? Disappointing showing for the right-wing bloc in Spain. How you doing? Welcome to Inside the Numbers, my friend. Oh, the audio, buddy. Audio. I got you. There you go. You got to unmute your mic. You're muted. No. Yeah, I see the mute button.
We are. Fantastic.
There you go, bro.
Technological mastery. Well, it's always fun to be talking about Spanish politics. Gosh, there's no eerie parallels there, are there?
Yeah. 2 million mail-in votes. They tell us the heat was to blame, Kurt. The heat.
Let's just say the Spanish are quirky. It's a very odd country. There are some lessons. There are some lessons going on with in Israel right now too, and Britain. We can learn a lot from the people overseas and how they're screwing up. And boy, are they screwing up! I think we're screwing up here too.
So bad, Kurt. I actually I can't believe that once it happens, once you get to that point, how hard it is using normal mechanisms of elections and the institutions of democracy, how difficult it is to right the ship once you screw it up. It's like impossible. And history tells us, Kurt, once it happens, it takes extraordinary events to fix it.
Well, speaking of Spain, the whole Spanish Civil War started when the communists decided that they were going to impose communism on Spain, and Franco and his coalition. It wasn't just fascists; it was a lot of different people.
That's right.
Royalists, nationalists. People want to do this like simple black and white thing about the Spanish Civil War, and that's the dumbest thing ever. But no, it was the nationalists saw no way to be heard. They thought they were going to be completely locked out of power forever, so they picked up rifles. That's a scary thing, but it's not unusual. That's what happens in most of history.
Yeah, and this is what I think Americans have a false sense of security. You're a lawyer. What do you think? Let me just get your reaction to this latest. What's your reaction to what we expect Jack Smith to do here? I mean, Georgia.
It's going to be another frame job. Look, people are like, Kurt, what do you think of these indictments as a lawyer? And my answer is I don't.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with the law.
The law. Yeah.
It's a joke. It's pure political power. And unfortunately, see, the problem is I think America is kind of operating on default. I think America is operating kind of on fumes in the sense that, the vast majority of people kind of have a sense that something's wrong, but they're not quite ready to get to the point where they say, the America I grew up with has permanently and changed and requires a response. And, so you have, the Justice Department is investigating crimes because the rule of law is important. And that's all baloney. It's all a lie. And I think more people are seeing it. And unfortunately, when the currency is power, people will use whatever kind of power they have. If your power is, to leverage a giant corporation to make social change or to use the legal system to mess with people. You know why Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon with a legion? It was because as soon as he put down his proconsular authority, he was going to be subject to lawfare. And his enemies were sitting in Rome going like this.
Yeah.
He just screw him over. And he said, no, I'm going to use the power that I have. And I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm making an observation.
Yeah, it's just reality. Yeah. Reality. He decided.
I know. I write these Kelly Turnbull People's Republic books, which are very popular. And thank all of you people who've read them. They're a lot of fun. Writing the 8th one. And I get a lot of great. It's about America splits in two and what happens. And a lot of people are, oh, you're promoting, secession and all this stuff. No, you freaking idiots.
Thought exercise.
I'm trying to warn you.
Yeah.
This is a big red flashing light. This is a don't do this, dummy. And it's not happy for any side, The idea that we can throw away the greatest system of human governance that God has ever granted any people, and it's going to somehow be better, our side's not going to be much happier than the other side. The only thing we might be able to say is, at least we're not the serfs.
Well, isn't this, let me ask you real, because I know I get people that always get mad at me when I say this, but we're in the book club and locals, we're reading, and we were supposed to finish it yesterday, but my son's birthday, it got changed around plans, so I had to cancel it. But next week we'll finish it. The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, Bernard Balin. Isn't this our fault? I mean, if we're being honest, this is our fault.
It's all our fault.
It's not some hysterical, right, like monster hiding in the closet. We did this by sitting on our asses and not being cards. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with human nature. I look at our ruling elite now and I call them cultural trust fund babies, right? they didn't build these institutions. They didn't struggle for them. They didn't sweat for them. They were just given them. They inherited them. You get your credential at Harvard. Their hardest day at Harvard is the day before you get accepted to attend. After that, it's all downhill. You get your credential. You're not accomplished. You didn't build anything. You have no sweat equity. You just think that somehow you deserve it because you've been handed the position. I mean, can you think of a family whose third generation is worth a damn? Henry Ford, okay. Not a perfect guy, but he revolutionized manufacturing, created the 8-hour day. His children, they created the Mustang, built Ford Motor Company into a giant corporation. Any of the third generation of the Ford guys?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. And honestly, when we poll, we are asking, especially states like Arizona, Texas, Nevada. We'll always ask people, were you born here? Were you born in another state? Are you first, second, third generation? It's amazing because Republicans are doing better now with first generations, which you would think is not really conventional wisdom, right? Because if they're
it isn't, but it's absolutely understandable.
Yeah, but it's understandable, and the third generation is killing us, which used to be a strong, a strong block for Republicans, but these people are just.
Well, look, I'm not sure that's going to hold up to the third generation. Now, you look over at Israel, and you have the Sephardic Ashkenazi thing, and I'm not an expert on Jewish politics or culture or Israel or whatever, but I have an understanding that kind of like the Sephardic European-based population is more left, and the folks who came from the Arab countries and from Ethiopia or more right wing. Now, it's not a perfect thing, but that is kind of a dull, kind of a blunt instrument for calculating it. But the idea that all the immigrants are immediately going to sign on to what a bunch of the rich guys who live out here in Manhattan Beach think. Yeah. We saw that in Michigan, where you had these Muslim guys who were supposed to be part of this coalition of the left. And they're like, no, you're not gonna teach my kid that there's 52 genders. We're not going to have that.
You're banning pride flags.
And of course, I married into a Hispanic family.
Yeah.
And they're not playing a lot of what these damn communists like. So the coalitions in America are always unstable because it's 50+1.
Yeah. And that's, with especially with the Hispanic generation, it's a big shift right now. There's just nowhere left to go, and they understand that better than anybody.
Yes. They get it.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to run, Kurt.
But I used to think, well, the Democrats are open the border. They're just, it's all gonna, be total Democrats. I'm not so sure now. I mean, we saw in the last election a huge number of Hispanic Americans going, I'm not voting for these damn communists.
It may be,
and I think that's a huge opportunity for us as conservatives and Republicans, not necessarily being the same thing. And one of the one of the great things about Donald Trump is that he really opened the door to that, and his message was received well by a lot of people who aren't thought of, who are stereotyped as non-Republicans. And I don't think the stereotypes work completely. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't.
It could be the biggest like irony in American politics that the Ted Kennedys of the world, and it's like the left gets so pissed when you use the word replacement theory, right? They brought up replacement theory.
That was their idea.
Their idea. And it would be the biggest irony ever that 30, 40 years plan in the making undoes them. You know, like all of these very rich, educated, I hate that word. Let's say credentialed.
Absolutely
yes.
right.
All these rich, credentialed white people go the way of the dodo, and
they have 1.2 babies.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I mean, they're just, I saw a very, somebody sent me a Politico article saying, the Republicans are in great danger because we have these college towns, and the college towns are getting more blue, and that's, screwing up even Republican states. And I'm thinking, that's going to be a problem for about 20 years.
Yes, right. And then they go away, Kurt, because they don't breed. Right. They can't repopulate themselves. I hate to be dark here, but they're at the end. They're at their height before it's over for them.
Yes. I mean, look, I live in Los Angeles. I live in the South Bay. Everybody, that's Ted Lieu's district out there. You can probably see a homeless bum somewhere. And, look, I'm diversity for everybody: Christian, Army guy, Republican. So everybody's like, well, I know one of them, and they're all Kurt. But I'm a 58-year-old guy. I'm done having kids. So are all the leftists with the hate has no home here signs in their front yard. Okay, they're not pumping out the kids. But the people who are pumping out the kids are the guys who believe in something, because you have to believe in the future to have kids.
That's right.
And, I think we have a present bias that we think now is stuck in stone, and it's not.
The emerging Democratic majority, which did not emerge. And then, by the way, people are, not everyone's old enough to remember this. And I wasn't around. I just researched it. I remember it. When Nixon won re-election, it was right there in the front of the New York Times. The emerging right-wing majority, right? So these things never stay forever. And I hate the concept of walls. This is a red wall. This is a blue wall. This is, man, every Christmas I watch White Christmas with my family, Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, and when he's convincing him to go to Vermont, right? And of course, he wants to go there because of the girls, but Bing Crosby doesn't know it. And he says, what the hell is in Vermont other than snow and Republicans, right? So that's what it was back then.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Look, this was Reagan country. I got here when Ronald Reagan was the president. This was Reagan country. And now it's something very, very different. And then what's it going to be in 5 or 10 years? 20 years?
We don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to, history ignores us in the present. History's got its own agenda. I remember being told, I was at the time and the place of America's greatest power. I was at 7 Corps headquarters in the Gulf War. We had just annihilated 36 divisions in 100 hours. This was a military feat worthy of Hannibal or Caesar.
Yeah.
And we were absolutely unchallenged. Every other country was like, what? The Russians literally threw in the towel. They just said, we're done. We can't compete. So I was physically right there. And it's all been downhill since. Because, Francis Fukuyama told us history is over. Yeah. And we made the greatest mistake, a foreign policy mistake, I think, of the last 30 years, which is saying something, which is not making Russians friends, at least bringing them within the Western orbit.
You know what? I'm so glad you said that. Let's talk about that.
And I'm not a Russian lover guy. I trained Ukrainian soldiers. I was in the Cold War. I have no illusions about them, but I also know realpolitik.
Yeah.
And that means, making your enemy not your enemy. That goes a long way.
I think, Nixon, there was a Gallup poll last week that put Richard Nixon down there with like the worst presidents ever. And he gets a bad rap because of Watergate. And the truth is,
He was a hiker compared to this
guy.
puppet.
That's right. That's right. So, it's like he doesn't get any credit for some of the great things he did, détente being one of them. And it's like, I'm definitely a realist when it comes to foreign policy. I'm an offensive realist. I've been studying Mearsheimer since I was like 20, something. He's been right all along. And with that in mind, it's like, and by the way, the book club, we read The Tragedy of Great Power Politics. Why you're not engaging Russia? Because they're in another region where obviously the Chinese their rise are still a threat to them, their sphere of influence. It makes sense to engage with Russia. Of course, they're not friends, but you're not pro Putin to look at the balance of the international system.
Are you pro Stalin for fighting the Nazis?
That's right.
Exactly. Look, our foreign policy establishment has failed in literally everything it's done the last 30 years.
Yeah.
But more than that, they have refused to do any kind of self-reflection. There's never been any accountability. You never hear them go, maybe I want a great idea. And until you do that, you can't change. And they continually make the same mistakes. And then they throw in this bogus, poorly thought through pseudo morale. Well, we can't possibly talk to the Russians. Well, dude, they've got 5,000 nuclear weapons. Maybe you better. It doesn't mean I like them. Again, I literally trained Ukrainian soldiers. I like the Ukrainians. I would like the Ukrainians to win, but I'd also like a pony.
Right. And yesterday, by the way, I was getting all these text messages from people who follow the the counter offensive. Of course, they're making excuses now, but it's like, a million people have been saying this wasn't going to work. We're bleeding this country, Kurt.
Look, I'm just a simple colonel from the War College. There are three ways that Ukraine can work out. Yeah. The Ukrainians can get enough equipment and men, and I'm not sure they have enough men, to win the battle. That is, throw Putin out. Okay, I wouldn't mind that. They shouldn't have been invaded. I know it's all a bunch of Slavic insanity that we can't understand, but you don't send 200,000 armored troops in to solve a problem. That's not okay. The second thing is we can use our power, and Donald Trump was talking about it kind of, to leverage a peace settlement. The problem is any peace settlement's going to somehow reward Putin. Not as much as he wants, maybe not even as much as he needs to show that he's won, but he would get something out of it because that's how negotiations work, said the lawyer.
Yeah.
And then there's the worst, and those are bad choices, both of them, because they're bad. They're bad consequences for both. But if you want the worst, how about promoting a stalemate that just kills people? And drains our equipment and our money and our morale and makes our foreign policy disjointed and stupid. Well, naturally, that's the one our people have chosen. Not enough to win, not enough to lose, just enough to fill up the graveyards.
Yeah, let me while we put this up here, this is what people were going over yesterday, and this appears in the Wall Street Journal after it appears that the Russian forces have broken through across or now can go across the Oskil River. So this is what appears in the Wall Street Journal. This is a quote. Of course, it's always some Western intelligence official, right? Western military officials knew Kiev didn't have all of the training or weapons that it needed to dislodge Russian forces, but they hoped Ukrainian courage and resourcefulness would carry the day.
Look, I'm a big believer in courage and morale. They're necessary components, but I also like big piles of 155 artillery.
No kidding. This is
the problem I see is history. If you look at Russia, whether it's Napoleon, World War I, to some extent, World War II, the Russians always get creamed at the beginning. Then they cull out the guys who look like Russian thugs from Central Casting, they get tough generals who know how to fight. And then they rebuild, retrain. Now they're experienced. Now they've got new and better equipment. And now there's Russia Army 2.0. And that's the one that does the winning. And Russians are very tough too, just like Ukrainians. If you've heard of what they did at Stalingrad, It's, you know, these are not sissies. And I am worried that at some point the Russians build up enough combat power to break through the Ukrainians. Ukrainian front collapses. Suddenly, now, Kiev's threatening. Suddenly, you got Lindsey Graham going, "We've got to send in 7 Corps, 5
They're
Corps."
going to Poland.
And look, my test is it's a pretty simple one. Can you go to the mother of a dead paratrooper in Omaha and explain to him why her son's in a box? Now, I could do that in World War II. I could do it in Vietnam, kind of. Certainly in the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan, I have no moral problem with our guys fighting there. But I would have a huge problem explaining strategically why it was worth her son's life.
Yeah.
In those two states, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and in Ukraine.
Speaking of Mearsheimer, who I brought up before, and what you said, it's like he really put it great. I mean, after World War I, the Russians kind of learned this lesson. They were outproduced by the Germans, and by World War II, they developed this very different strategy of we're never going to be outproduced again at the beginning of a conflict. So whether it's munitions, rifles, whatever it may be, they just focus an enormous amount of effort on that. Putting, the least of them, it's sad to say, but this is what they do, putting the least of them at the front first, so when they incur losses, it's like, whatever, I'm building up ammunitions.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been doing. And they did this here, Kurt, very clearly, despite people who know what they're talking about, know how the Russians operate, warning that from the very beginning. I mean, I had Joe Ken on here at the start of this conflict, and he said, "Rich, you know what's going to happen. They're going to put the bombs up front, and the media is going to yell about how many casualties they're taking. Meanwhile, the ammunitions are going to stockpile, and they're going to come back with a vengeance, because that's what Russians do."
Look, Russians,
totally right.
Americans and Russians fight in a similar way, but differently. The Russians use mass of largely people. America uses mass logistically. Now, I don't tell a lot of war stories from the Gulf, but I'll tell one that's important. One day I go over Tabline Road. I go into a wadi near Hafr al-Batin, and there's nothing there, far as the eye can see. Just, the occasional lizard, dirt and sky. 3 days later, I drive in. That entire valley is covered with forward operating bases, overflowing with equipment, tanks, artillery, food, bullets, fuel, everything you could ever want. It is power to have a battalion of tanks. That's power. But to be able to move the equivalent of a city across the globe and drop in the middle of a desert and then literally drive it north to your enemy, that is superpower. Our power, American power, look, Americans are good fighters, but our power is logistical power. We have a lot of stuff, and we will F you up with it. We will just dump it on you all day until you die. Now we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We don't have quantity. We're running out of ammo stocks. We're not thinking about fighting the way we used to win, which is in World War II. If you were a German, you were terrified to start hit your mic, because as soon as you did, you were or do anything, because as soon as you did, the Americans were going to drop bombs on you.
Why is that though now, Kurt? Why aren't we fighting like that anymore? Politics?
Because it's expensive.
It's
for
expensive.
One thing.
Okay.
And now you see all this focus on special forces. Love the special forces.
Way over focused.
Look, a scalpel is an important tool to have. You know what else is important? A sledgehammer. I had I was an acting brigade commander of an infantry unit, and I had a special forces friend. He goes, man, we're just the cutting edge. And I go, yeah, you're pretty good, but I have an artillery battalion.
Yeah, we're over relying on special forces. You ever see The Terminalist, Chris Pratt?
Yeah.
You ever see it? That's a great attempt to try and explain the over-reliance on special forces.
Yes.
They have a role.
It is over-reliance. We would, because in a way it's cheaper. Oh, you spend $10 million on the guy, but if you're giving me a battalion, you got to give me $500 million.
Yeah.
Right? But there's things a battalion can do that an operational, detachment alpha can't.
That, and it is politics to a certain extent, Kurt, because you can have a couple Green Berets or a couple Navy SEALs or something, die in a
Yes.
mission that nobody hears
Yes.
about, and then it's not on CNN every day.
No,
You have
it's not on CNN. Plus, people are like, well, they're professionals. They kind of sign
that's
up for
what they
that.
signed up
But
for.
you got the 19-year-old guy, graduated high school in Oklahoma, and then he gets killed, and that just devastates his hometown. Not that it doesn't for the special forces guy, but there's kind of a difference between an American citizen soldier and the quiet professional guys in the minds of Americans. Although their lives are both priceless. And
Okay.
the American military has made a great effort to avoid bringing home Americans in boxes, and they haven't always succeeded. I had the honor of, for a short time, representing the family of one of the Marines killed in Kabul, and what a freaking disgrace that was.
Absolutely.
There's a whole show there, but I think that's there's also the problem with our elite, which is completely distanced from the ground military, while the senior levels of the military are fully integrated into the elite. I joked about War College. War College was designed not to teach me how to fight campaigns. It was to teach me how to be civilized, to deal with SES, executives. That's what it was. And that's why you see woke generals, because that's their world. They're in that.
That was creeping in when I was still in, but they were mocked, man. Mocked. Like, people had these stupid ideas of the stress cards and, at Benning, because they did do a pilot program.
It's not Benning anymore.
I know.
What it is.
It'll always be Benning in my mind.
Yeah, as if we were like, oh, that base we were at that was named after a Confederate general. No, it was the place where I freaking sweat and jumped out of planes.
Right. That's right. Sand Hill, baby. Are you kidding? So this was joked and mocked. When I was still a soldier. But this is the Army for you. And I was thinking about politics. When I was in 18 X-ray, they took all these different guys. We ranged from 18 to, I think the cutoff was 34, and they pushed right up against it, Kurt. Like, if you could get through by the time you were 34, they would use you. I think it was 34. Anyway, there was this kid. His name was Springer. He was 19. And he gets through SFAS. First, even before that, he gets through SOPC, which is a conditioning course to get you through SFAS.
Nice.
And everyone's getting ready to go to the Q course and deciding what they're going to be. Whether you're going to be a Charlie, you're going to be a Delta. And they drop him. And he's crying. I mean, unless you can't even blame the kid. He's gone through it all. Why are you dropping me? They told him it was because he was too young. And I just thought to myself, this is the biggest load of horse shit I've ever heard. He has a baby face, and they don't want him dead on the cover of some magazine somewhere. And after everything, they send him to the 82nd Airborne, Kurt. He does it all. He didn't get through Q yet, but
by the way, Audie Murphy kind of had a baby face, huh?
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
that guy's a stone killer.
And I was just gonna say, and honestly, like you said, I always thought he signed up. He knew what he was getting into. He completed it. I mean, it wasn't right. And I just, that's something that stuck with me all these years later, because he didn't want to be anything other than, a special forces operator.
I hope he gets his opportunity to. I'm not sure he will, because our military is a complete disaster. Which is why 2024 is so critical. As you know, the military hierarchical organization, soldiers do what commanders check.
Yeah.
And if they check wokeness, you're going to get wokeness. If they check combat readiness, the beauty of the military is, though people are surprised it's changed, I'm not. When the boss says change, you change. But you can change back, and you can change back fast. Requires focus and attention by the commander-in-chief. Requires not being impressed by generals, which is a problem for many civilians. The first step taking back our institutions, take back the military, because it can be done the fastest and the most cleanly, and demonstrate that it is possible.
I don't know if I could find it within a quick amount of time, but last week Jordan Schlicter reported on his Substack, and he had the documents. I mean, he had the goods, Kurt. If you are a trans soldier,
Yep.
you saw this. I know you did,
Yeah.
right? Permanent profile, so you never have to do the standards on your PT test, and you're non-deployable.
Yeah.
What the hell is the point of you being in the military then? We had a name for them. 2 names. One, the nice one, turds. The second one, shitbags.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we called them. So
look, if you can't deploy, you've got to get out.
You got to go.
I mean, you've got to go. You're just holding up a space. It just makes sense, but sense isn't the purpose. The purpose is to change the nature of the military into a friendly institution, which is what they want to do. When you have generals and civilian leaders talking about, well, we have to make it more diverse. The military is the one organization that crushes diversity.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was always diverse. I came out of the Army and went into Loyola Law School in Los Angeles, which is where all the rich kids who couldn't quite make it into UCLA ended up. And let me tell you, it was whiter than a Mitt Romney family reunion. So I go from the military, right? With, and I had guys from the ghetto. I had guys from the barrio. I had guys from the country.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course they all thought I was crazy because I'm the suburban California kid listening to alternative music. I was diversity to them. And then I get in this place and everybody's literally exactly the same, not only physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
They all think the same way. And it was quite a change. It was really weird too. They'd come up to me with their latent racism, like I'd be receptive to it, that they couldn't say to their friends. But they're like, well, about those guys. I'd be like, why are you talking to me?
Right.
Don't speak to me.
Yep. All green. And that's,
that's
the worst.
I cultivated the craziness factor, so that they thought I was the insane Army guy. So most of them just left me the hell.
Give them the crooked eye, right?
Oh yeah, I'd be like, oh, crazy. And I wrote myself onto law review. It freaked them out because they thought I'd naturally have to be an idiot because I was in the Army. Only idiots go in the Army, right?
That's the most tragic thing about how the attempts to turn the military into social experiments, because the truth is they are truly, I don't mean progressive in the way the left uses the word. I mean, the military is a truly progressive institution, not in the left sense.
Yes.
You don't, it doesn't matter color, shape, size, creed. It just doesn't, right? You all have this level of respect for each other. You've been through the same thing. I've never occurred. Doesn't matter if because after I got hurt, I remember they didn't know what to do with me. So they sent me to you just be cadre for 11 Bravo back at Benning, right? And I mean, at that level, you run into all these people who are from, the middle of the country, the South. I just never experienced anything that you would be, as a Northerner, you would be told you would see in the military.
No, not at all.
Acts of racism, nothing.
No,
nothing.
It was
even at that
racism is always stupid, and in the military, it's not always stupid, but it's dangerous and it gets in the way.
That's right.
And I'm not talking about fake Mike Milley. I've got to learn about white extremism.
Yeah,
right? That's nonsense, and he ought to know better. Worst chairman of the Joint Chiefs ever. And, I heard he was really good battalion commander. He was grade 05. The guys in his unit are Kurt. I mean, he was a fantastic commander. What happened? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if you pin on stars, you become an idiot. Maybe if I had stayed in instead of doing this conservative stuff, maybe I'd be a blithering moron now. Though people think I am already.
No, honestly, you never know. I mean, I've had people tell me that known Clapper for years that told me Clapper was one of the good guys. For years, he was great. He was one of the good guys. I don't know what the hell happened to him. I guess it's something, you run through the bureaucracy. You're in that area, and if it's just more political than it is about being a soldier or sailor or whatever it is, and just something happens to you, it changes. I mean, I've heard that from multiple people who know Clapper for years, and I know Clapper from what I've seen him in the news and how he conducted himself during the Obama years. I can't even imagine there was another Jim Clapper, and they're telling me there was.
Look, I mean, he's kind of the poster child for the dual track justice system that's killing our country, and it's you know, I'm worried, and I'm
Yeah.
worried about the next election. And let's address the elephant in the room, because
Yeah,
I've become famous
it's
for
1:36, so let's do that.
questioning whether Donald Trump's likely to win in the general.
Yeah, let's do that.
I
That's
like
where I was
Trump.
going
I
next.
support him. I don't think he's going to win the general. And all the listeners are like, finally, Schlichter comes
Well,
out.
we had to talk. We had to talk before everybody had their day. We had to talk. Why is that though, Kurt? Because because I'm taking this from the voter point of view.
Yep.
And you know, like cherry picking polls, I do trust my own more than I trust anybody else's. But from the very beginning of this, there's always been one question for me. There is very clearly a vote for Donald Trump that just doesn't come out for anybody else. And
Yes.
we didn't know what to call it. So we called it the Trump or bust, or the Trump only. And now last week, David at Suffolk University uses the phrase Trump or bust. And he polled Ohio.
Without thanking you, no doubt.
Without thanking me. And I said, you know what, whatever, as long as you're better to the party than not at all. And as long as we're having the discussion, I guess I'm happy that we're having the discussion. But yeah, I mean, there's no way he came up with that phrase on his own, man. You know, he absolutely saw us talking about it and used the phrase.
Yeah, no, and look, you're absolutely correct. There's a group who came in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And they aren't really Republicans, and some will tell you that. In the sense that I am, because I was a Republican from second grade, but I wouldn't put me in the moderate category. I was always the bomb thrower side. But these new guys are look, they are Trump voters. They are not Republican voters, so their vote is not necessarily transferable. You know, if Ron DeSantis comes back and wins the nomination, it's not a done deal for them. I think for most other Republicans, it is. And I'm going to vote for the nominee. I don't care who it is. Asa freaking Hutchinson.
Yeah, you've always said that.
I always say it because we're having a primary and the winner should, he won. Okay, let's recognize him as the winner and treat him that way. I'm very worried about Donald Trump, and I'll tell you why. I think the evidence is, and the polls are all over the place, as you pointed out. What is very clear is he is right now decisively in the lead in the Republican primary, though he's only at about half. And I'm not sure that's a great place to be if only half the Republicans are supporting the former president. But he is far in the lead. I think DeSantis is second, and he's about the same place he's always been. I don't think he's going to, and I don't think there's an opportunity to move really, at least until the debate. And I'm not sure if Trump will be at the debate or not. I find it hard for him to believe that he's going to skip it.
I have an unpopular take on that, Kurt. And it's only because I like to say that I talk for voters that don't get a say in the media. Mm-hmm. He should debate. People don't like when they don't debate. Now, I know a lot of people disagree with me, the Trump supporters. They disagree with that. But the fact is, go to an Iowa State fair. Go. They want to see you. They want to see it. Do something else. You don't like Fox News? Invite Ron DeSantis and whoever else to another thing that you put on with Tucker or something, or have somebody separate do it. Because I get the Fox News thing. They're pieces of crap, man. I'm not gonna, I mean, I get that, but they want advertisement money, Kurt. That's why they want a debate.
Of course.
But you got to do something. You have to do something.
I think that's right. But, and again, I want to emphasize, I'm not anti-Donald Trump. I'll happily, if you came into me and said, Kurt, you can have certainty of Donald Trump for 4 years.
Yeah.
But you got to take Donald Trump. I'd be like,
does it bother you? Does it concern,
no certainty.
Does it concern you that Ron, and here, let me finish when I say this. Does it concern you that Ron DeSantis' strategy has always relied on Jack Smith taking him out? Like, so even in the New York Times, because I was doing this and all these people's like, he's full of shit. I'm not full of shit. The donors told me, the campaign told them they will win when Trump gets indicted. That's how I know. And now I've flat out told people that. Does it concern you that somebody, I mean, to that effect, man, he's basically partnering with the administrative state to beat Trump, or that's the plan, Does that concern you? Like, how could you
No.
trust him to go after the administrative state if he's doing that?
Let's assume that the donors are giving you accurate information.
They are.
You've got to fight the battlefield you're on. The battlefield we're on is Donald Trump's being indicted. He's being framed, as I've always said, and I continue to say, he's being framed. But it exists. It is a thing. How do we react to it? Because it's going to have an effect on some people. It just is. So it's not partnering with the enemy. It would be reacting to the battlefield as the battlefield is laid out. Not right or wrong. It's just what is. And we do need somebody there in case, for God's sake, you think Biden wouldn't lock this guy up and throw him into a freaking penitentiary if he could?
Absolutely. I keep telling
so
people,
we've got to be ready. But there are also voters who do not feel like us. The indictments to Trump, if anything, like most voters, make him more appealing to me because I want to put up a giant middle finger. And I think that's part of the reason he went up.
I think that's what's going on too.
Yes. Yeah. And I get it. But it is happening and it's going to happen. And it's got to be dealt with. And good Lord, I'm not in the Trump legal team. I don't like the way they're litigating it.
Yeah.
I don't think they are not doing it the way I would do. But when I do conservative stuff, most of which no one ever hears about, I deal with it as a lawyer, not a politician. The problem is this is a guy who's a politician who's running for office. So I'm not sure, my litigation strategy to get him out of these bogus, false, invented charges would be a legal strategy rather than a political strategy, except he's in the middle of a political campaign. So I'm not sure it would be right. Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with accepting the reality that you're faced with. The reality we're faced with is there's going to be at least 3 or 4 sets of false charges pending against this president, and that does mean something. It will have an effect not on us, but on other voters. There are voters out there who will not vote for Donald Trump because of this. Now, I think Donald Trump's already got a ceiling of about 47%. He threaded the needle in 2016, thank God. But I don't want to be the guy who's playing blackjack facing a dealer, with a king showing, and I've got 16, and I'm like, hit me. Oh, I might beat him. I'm probably not going to. I think Trump's got about an 85% chance of losing right now.
Well, then let me ask you this, because I think it's a fair point to say that it will bother certain people and that will prevent them from voting. But the question for me is that bigger than the number of people who will not show up for Ron DeSantis? And
it's more than that. The untapped Republican vote is more than just the people turned off by the indictments. The indictments are a part of it, but there are other people. See, the thing is, Democrats right now despise Biden, but all of them will vote for him.
Will vote for him, yeah.
A lot of Republicans despise Trump, and only some of them will vote for him. So we've got to figure out, are there more, is some other candidate going to be able to get more people than the folks who will only vote for Trump? And I think the only vote for Trump at the end is going to be pretty small, mostly because I expect the president to, even if he loses at some point, loses the nomination at some point, to say, hey, you got to go out and vote for this guy.
See, that's
or
where
gal, if it's Nikki Haley and lightning strikes, which it won't.
She's ahead of DeSantis in South Carolina now. That was always I got to tell people this. That was with 2 hometown people in the race. That was likely to happen. They have money. I know a lot of people blow them off, but they got money. And
she's got bucks.
Yeah. And Tim Scott reminds me of like Marco Rubio in Iowa in 2016. The last Iowa poll we did, He's little now, but he's got a huge war chest, and there are people in Iowa who are going to. I'm not going to say he's not going to win, but I mean he's going to be a pain in the ass who pulls a good deal from somebody.
I think he is. But look, I think right now we're 18 months out. We're 6 months from the first.
From Iowa.
6 months from the first primary. I don't think people have really necessarily started thinking about it. I think if you had to run it down, Trump's got a very good chance of winning. I think DeSantis has a reasonable chance of winning, especially if he can take Iowa and New Hampshire. If that happens, I think that changes everything, and there may be a cascade effect.
Yeah, he's got to take one of them. That's how.
I agree. That's where the fight is.
Yeah.
And if I was DeSantis, I'd kind of be doing what he's doing now, avoiding a direct fight, going more media, holding his own. I would be collecting money left and right, which he's doing. I would be looking forward to the debate because I think he's going to do well. I mean, look, the only strategy that works against Trump is the strategy potentially works against Trump because we don't know how it's going to work. I think is the one that DeSantis is using now. But look, I'm very worried that Trump is simply not going to be able to get those swing states. Not going to be able to get PA. Not going to be able to get Wisconsin. I think Minnesota's completely out of reach. Michigan, Arizona, Georgia. Look, and you know the thing, Trump is not a buffet. He is a fixed price menu. You only get one kind of Trump. So the idea of me going, well, you know, if Trump would only stop saying Trump things, he wouldn't alienate so many people in Georgia. That won't happen because he's Trump. And the things that I love about Trump are the same characteristics that make him do the things that drive me up the freaking wall and a lot of other voters.
That's him. You got to take him. You got to take
him. He is a
good
guy.
I got to say this though, Kurt. I got to say this. I think people who support Ron DeSantis and have that view really don't appreciate the historic nature of the coalition that won him Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, because I think it's going to be difficult to take some of these states this time around because of the way the election laws have changed. It's going to be. Mitchell Research the other day was like the third one behind us in Suffolk that the Rust Belt states, Trump won them for a very special reason. Republicans have failed to win them for a good reason. They don't get those votes, Kurt. Look at even
I agree.
You know, Macomb County, Michigan, they lose it. Trump, there's actually a majority of Democrats in Macomb County, and Trump wins it. It's just it's not a traditional Republican cannot win these states. That's just,
look, I don't know if he can put together a traditional the non-traditional coalition, because the coalition with Trump included a lot of working people.
Yeah.
And that message is huge, especially with the economy going down. You know, Bidenomics don't seem to be doing great. I mean, lawyers are doing fine, but everybody else, that's certainly one of the challenges. How do you get all these voters on board? And hopefully bring back kind of the regular soft Republican who's like, well, you know, I kind of like Trump's economic policies, but boy, those tweets about Stormy Daniels really, you know, upset me because I'm kind of a sissy.
Yeah.
And it drives me crazy. But that again, that's a reality we've got to face.
Yeah, I got a couple of them in my family.
I know, it drives me nuts.
I think that Biden benefited from like that decent guy. I'm a decent guy. The decency argument, and it was fake. It was totally fake, but it didn't matter. People believed it. And
he's going to. Well, first of all, he's going to be impeached. I don't think there's any way Kevin McCarthy can get away with not.
Oh my God, we have to talk about this. This is something else that was on the list. We just started talking about Russia for so long. I forgot to ask you. Isn't it true if they would move on Merrick Garland and Kevin McCarthy and the lot of them? Of course, you're not going to remove them from office because the Senate's never going to okay it, but you're going to do what Adam Schiff did, which is, bring it all into light. You can control that narrative.
I think you got to go for the kill shot. Otherwise, remember the fourth Alinsky law: anything that goes on too long becomes a drag. Right. Another impeachment. This time, the president. Blah blah blah. We already did Mayorkas. We did Garland.
Let's go right for the gusto from the jump.
You gotta go for Biden. The problem is that weakens Biden, who is the weakest candidate other than Kamala, and it will encourage him to drop out. I think Trump's best shot, or any Republican's best shot, is against Biden.
You think that really? Even though he polls, honestly, Kurt, he polls the strongest. Maybe it's just name recognition and that he's a sitting president.
I think there's, we got 18 months of this creep staggering around like a zombie in the Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, it's a long time. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be more concerned. I see Gavin Newsom, my governor, sitting out there going, he's like at the window.
Yeah, that's what like Steve Bannon thinks. He thinks Gavin is going to be the guy.
I think Gavin would be the guy. You hear, Michelle Obama. Oh yeah, like
I don't think that's happening.
Like she wants to do work. No, Gavin Newsom definitely wants to do it. And you remember what happened with there was something in New Jersey. They had one guy fall out, and they immediately put some other leftist in there, and they won. I can absolutely see them doing that.
You think they could leapfrog Kamala like that, though? You think she'd allow that to happen?
When they get the idea that because they understand she's going to closer to having a chance of losing. I think they will in a heartbeat.
Push her
aside. I think all the people in the Democrat Party will celebrate it.
He's just such a limited guy. He reminds me of John Kerry only on the West Coast. Like he only appeals to certain white, progressive, rich liberals. Like I just don't see him getting black
votes here. And California is not
true. Yeah.
California is not 60% rich white liberals. It's about
5%. He did survive the recall. He did.
Yeah,
he did.
Larry Elder gave it a good try. I don't think Larry Elder will be around along with a lot of these other guys come to Iowa.
The hell do you think they're doing, Kurt? What do you think? What do you think Larry's doing? What do you think some of these people are doing?
I don't know. Asa Hutch, Mike Pence, who's a serious politician.
Yeah.
But he's soft. And I'm listening to him on Hewitt. And Hewitt's one of the best interviewers in the business. And this guy's just coming off like he's the cutting edge of 2005.
Yeah.
Well, we have to grow our economy to provide opportunity for American families. We need to. And I get that in the sense that, I'm for a strong economy for America's family, but that's a giant cliche. And they're guys like him and Asa are not hearing the pain that Americans are in, and the pain of their job being sent off to Szechuan, the pain of their kid dying of fentanyl, the pain of their son not getting a chance to go to medical school because his grandfather came from the wrong country.
Yeah.
Or the fear of the daughter being told your name now you're Mike. And they don't, because it's icky and unseemly to fight these culture war issues. But I got to tell you, the culture is where we live.
If you look at not that I'm in love with the Fox polls, but you look at the Fox polls and it's like, people are concerned about the economy, but it's like the fear of the state is something that is bubbling. It's not even bubbling anymore. I mean, I think it's burst up, where people are just, he's over there talking like it's a 2004 Republican primary, and like people don't legitimately feel afraid for the future of their family, security from their own government and from the people who are in charge.
He likes institutions. He doesn't know what time. He doesn't understand that the institutions have turned against us and are our enemy. He thinks that I'm not here to tell corporations what to do. Well, are corporations here to tell me what to do?
Right.
Because they're trying to. So what is my response?
Yeah.
Okay. To roll on my back and submit? Or do I use the power at hand to fight back? And I'm going with the guy who fights back. And that might not have been my answer 10 years ago. But the threat wasn't there 10 years ago. Not the same way.
You've always been because I've read your articles for a long time. And I remember when you wrote an article, and I wrote one too, just wasn't on a huge publication, like, at the time, like Town Hall. And basically our article said the same thing, which is pre-Bridgegate, everyone. And it was Chris Christie is the strongest candidate against Hillary Clinton. This was pre-Trump, pre-Bridgegate, which is why they pulled Bridgegate on him. They were scared of Chris Christie. And it seemed to me like, you've always favored electability. The electability argument for you has always been, is
you
that
gotta
fair?
win.
Is that fair? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta win.
Yeah.
That made me happy all the time.
Yeah. Maybe not. Win. You gotta win. Yeah. That's the way the sense I've got from you. I think you get a bad rap on social media. I think
I tell people I have not lost. Look, I have a lot of friends in Trump world. I have not lost a single one that I know of, because I think Ron DeSantis is the stronger candidate in the general. I'm not anti-Trump, and I'm not criticizing any of them. I have a different point of view. People should listen to it and then decide for themselves. Rick, the last thing anyone out there needs after all this is some freaking pundit telling them what to think and what to do. And I never want to tell anybody what to think or do. I didn't even like giving orders in the Army.
It's just their opinion.
Job, but I don't want to tell people what to do. I want to tell them what I think. And you're free to go, Kurt, that is a brilliant insight, and it's going to inform my future actions. Or you can say, Kurt, I think your thinking is weak and flabby. Here's some problems with it. I'm not going to do it. Now, you have a different point of view of mine. You've listened to my view. You think differently. I've listened to yours. I think differently. I'm going to keep listening to yours because you might convince me. And and maybe I'll convince somebody, or maybe I won't. But the idea that I'm somehow supposed to regurgitate things that I don't actually believe is an insult to the people that I'm trying to write for.
And I think that's why
I'm never going to do that.
I think you're sincere with that, and I think it's important to keep dialogue, because I do think you are persuadable. I think in 3 or 6 months, if the situation shows something different and you're convinced by that, you would change. Yeah, of course, I do. I've seen you
look, I am absolutely unsentimental about politicians. I like Ron DeSantis. I met him once. He wasn't a stiff for about 2 seconds, but he's not my friend. I don't work for him. I don't care about his dreams or ambitions. Not that I wish any harm on him. I feel the same way about Trump. I'm absolutely disinterested in what Trump wants. I'm interested in what I want for my country. I want to win. That's all I care about. Politicians are fungible. Like an orange, one is essentially the same as the other. Not quite true, but you get the point. I'm going to support the guy I think is going to obtain the objective, which is to win, which at least stops the damage. Then hopefully we can start turning it around. And if I go down the road and the evidence convinces me, because look, I'm both a lawyer and an Army officer. I deal in facts and persuasion. I'm going to be persuaded to change. It's nothing personal. I don't wish any ill on Trump. I like Trump. Trump, I think, was a great president, and I'm very grateful for what he did. But I don't owe him any loyalty, or DeSantis either. I'm not loyal to politicians. Politicians must be loyal to me and the voters.
Let me ask you this then, because I think I hear this a lot, just, from a pollster point of view. I want to ask you about what I hear from the electorate on this loyalty issue. So it's not just loyalty with the DeSantis stuff that we hear about. I'm talking about voters tell us the reason they stick with him is because he stuck with them, but also like they feel that he is being persecuted.
He is.
For being their voice, and they owe it to him to not abandon him. What do you make of that? Well, a lot. Like Kurt, I just heard this from a woman in New Hampshire. Like 3 months ago, she was a DeSantis voter, and now she's a Trump voter, and she's like, because he's gonna go to jail. Like, we owe this to him because he stood for us. I feel I owe it to him because he's going to spend the rest of his life in a jail cell if we don't get him back in the office. That was her, and she is very what's the word I'm looking for?
Sincere,
but also what she's saying is very indicative of what we hear from a lot of people.
Look, I understand it. I don't agree with it. I think if you really want to help Trump, you get the most electable Republican done. He promptly pardons both Trump and a bunch of the persecuted J6 people, which would be, right after you put down the phone from firing Chris Wray, signing all the pardons would be the first thing I would like to see the next president do.
You think Ron DeSantis would do that? I mean, considering everything we've heard, I mean, that he has not been friendly to the J6 people. He has.
I think you would be pleasantly surprised then.
Yeah,
because to establish that you cannot have a dual track justice system requires that the bad guys not win. They can't get away with it. Because the BLM guys were given a free pass, then so must the J6 people. Ball's in your court. Are we prosecuting these guys from now on or not?
So you think
we have to make it even. It has to be done without regard to, this guy punched a cop. Look, I'm not for punching cops. But you know what I'm for? A cop can take if the cost of having a single track justice system is a cop taking a punch, I'm going to you got to take the punch. The priority is establishing that there is a single justice system for everyone, and the only way to do that is to free and pardon and compensate.
And you think DeSantis would do that?
Oh, absolutely. Because first of all, I think he believes it. I haven't talked to him about it, obviously. I mean, I met him once. I shook his hand and made a joke about the Navy, which he laughed at.
That's Army.
Proving he's not a stiff. Look, but it's in his interest because he wants to bring about a single track justice system. He has to make it so that the evil does not prevail. The evil of a dual track justice system is these guys get persecuted, these guys don't. The only way to eliminate that is to pardon the people who were treated unequally.
Yeah, he's got to convince me on that, Kurt. So
all right, I'm just not there. Job. He's got to convince you. That is it.
I think he's mosey on along.
That's it. The politicians have got to convince you and every other person, not me, not you. I know you don't tell people what to do. I'm not telling people what to do. I'm telling them what I think. But the jobs, look, the candidates got to get it done. And I say very often, I think the 2020 election was rigged in the sense that there was some fraud. We found it in Nevada. First night I was there, we found it. Unlawful changes to election procedures.
Ludicrous.
And the finger on the scale by institutions and the regime media that was never before. So to call the 2020 election fair is a misnomer.
Yeah.
That being said, the job's to get it done. And Trump didn't get it done. He just didn't. He's not in the White House. And
you think anybody would have got it done, though? I mean, honestly, I was screaming at the top of my lungs.
I don't know, but that's why I voted for him to do. Are you going to get it done? I know it's hard. Are you going to get it done? If you're saying I can't get it done, get out of the way because maybe there's somebody come along who says he can. And I'm still annoyed about that Ronna McDaniel thing.
Leading up to 2020, nobody was paying attention. And I mean, I went back to clips.
There were people paying attention. And there were warning signs. But, the job was Ronna McDaniel's, among others.
Yeah, that's true.
And, of course, Trump, because he was the commander, to see what was coming. Again, I think Trump was let down by a lot of people. At the end of the day, commander.
I put more blame on I put more blame on Ronna for that because I just know that she was, we got this handled. We got this covered. And I'm over there trying to.
Currently saying that. I'm not, I heard her on the Ruthless podcast in detail. She's saying all the right things. I just don't know if it's true.
Yeah.
She's 0-5.
Democrats don't use the DNC to do this. They don't. They use like third-party groups. Yeah. It's ironically very decentralized. They don't raise any money to put forward these harvesting agendas or anything like that. They have all of these like third-party, even private groups that work with local election people in Wisconsin and Georgia. I mean, during 2022, they're basically just paying single mothers to go out and like bring back signed ballots. Like, I mean, this is what they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
And Rona's talking about, I thought the Republicans were supposed to be the decentralized one, Kurt. And they are talking about it in a centralized way, and Democrats don't. So it's scary.
And
concerns me, man, because they
don't. I'm very concerned about the state of the Republican parties in places like Minnesota, Arizona, Colorado. I think Michigan. When did they get in a fist fight in Michigan? I mean, what kind of loser gets in a fist fight for a job in the Republican National Committee or Michigan Republican Committee? But look, I mean, one of them. I think Minnesota has $54 in its party bank account. I mean, that's bad. So these are organizational problems, and we've got to fix them.
Yeah. Arizona is also in shambles. Yeah. Just is. Georgia is the old party boy situation. You know, I mean, the old grand old party boy situation, and nobody is doing.
Well, I think Kemp's got his own organization.
He does. Yeah, I was just going to say that's it.
And I think we'll see a lot of campaigns building their own organization. I know DeSantis is building his own.
Yeah, you have.
But it's just, it's very. All I can say is I'm glad that Democrats have problems too.
Well, it's 2:07. I don't want to keep you anymore. We're going to wrap it up. But tell people where to follow you, when your columns come out. You know, give them the rundown. Because...
All right, follow me on Twitter at Kurt Schlichter. Or I'm sorry, it's X now.
X.
And read my town hall columns every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I can't promise you'll like them. I can only promise you that it is what I think.
And you'll think about them. Yeah.
And get the Kelly Turnbull books.
Yeah, definitely. Kurt is still a staple. It has been for years for me, even though I don't agree with everything that he says.
Why should you?
Exactly. Thanks as always, Kurt. Come back. See you soon, brother.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.
All the best. Kurt Schlichter, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2:07, 2:08 now. Jeez, I went way over. Listen, I think, and I'm telling you, I've seen him do it before. I think in 2 months, 4 months, the evidence continues to build. I think Kurt's looking at it right now from a very how could I put it? Like a construct, not necessarily containing like overwhelming evidence of polling data. I think that's coming and it's going to come. I think he's thinking of it from like some common sense point of view, because common sense in normal elections would tell you indictments would hurt a guy. That would hurt a guy. But I am really starting to believe in what we read earlier in the show with Tip, which is that there is such a thing as a martyr syndrome. And I think combined with that, if that really does take root, which it is, it's already starting. I can see it. And let's bring up again, this is Iowa. I meant to show this to him, but he's seen it. I sent it to him in the past, but you can very clearly see that there just is not the vote. The Trump vote is not everyone's vote. It's Trump's vote. And it is true that what he said, that you need to keep that without losing a bunch of people who are scared because you've been indicted. And that's where the martyr syndrome comes in. And I think it's not even syndrome. It's real. It's real. There are going to be people who are more like Linda I was just talking about. And some people just stick in my head. They just do. We were polling it for something else. I'd love to poll New Hampshire, but we need another national. That's got to come first. Then we'll do another state. Although I can technically poll Florida again. I can do that. Sometimes I just have some opportunities to be able to. So maybe I don't know. We may do Florida before we do another national, but I'm behind here on the national. So share the public polling project far and wide. All right. And do what you can. And let's try to get one out there. It's July 24th. When was our last national? The end of June, or the beginning of July. So they're really getting close. And I want to see if we find that people have backed off a little bit. The polling has not been good for DeSantis. He's going to have to. I don't know that there is anything that can be done. I think that this one is baked into the cake. I disagree with Kurt on that. I think people aren't going to say, that particular indictment, that's it for me. I just don't see that happening. I don't know. I just don't. Again, I like been saying this for a couple of weeks now. I think most people will say this guy's been indicted more than like gangsters and real criminals and like Bernie Madoff. He's got more counts than Bernie Madoff. Really? Like, this is a bit insane. And I just don't know that piling more on top of it is going to do anything. And it is true. Like, you got it. If you want to make sure Trump doesn't spend the rest of his life in prison and you're a Republican and you're a Trump supporter, you know, of course, I've heard Steve Deese make the argument that Kurt just said. You want someone to win so that he can pardon him and keep him out of jail. I don't know. I think that, that would be, if you're Donald Trump, do you want your fate on the back of somebody else? Or do you want to be the guy who is determined? Look, if he loses, and then he's going to jail. But if it was me, I'd want to be in charge, at least in that way, of my own destiny. I would not want somebody else's ability to win an election be the hope that I spend time out of jail, because I got news for everybody. And good for Vivek for saying it last week after on my interview on Human Events with Jack Posobiec. They're, of course, trying to throw this guy in a jail cell. This isn't a show thing. He's not going to give up. I think Rachel Maddow said the quiet part out loud. If he did, maybe they would let him go away. But he's not. And he shouldn't have to. That would be a tragedy for America if somebody was forced out of consideration because of the threat of prosecution. Well, don't give me the cute tweets about elections coming up in Russia. This is an authoritarian state. It's not a real election. Well, what the hell do you think this is? It's not any better. It's not. In fact, it's worse, because at least there's no charade. Right? That's my opinion on it anyway. I'd rather take the outward appearance of authoritarianism other than hologram capitalism and a charade of free and fair elections. I'd rather not. Thank you. Just to let me know where I stand. And that's the thing. There's Eric. You're going to have to deal with people than this. I don't know that I believe that he would either. And I've heard, and I know everyone hates Laura Loomer, but that's why we had her on Friday. She's getting good stories. She's doing what she's doing. I didn't know about all those statements. I didn't know about those private conversations. Did you? That's why I asked her, do you really believe that he would pardon those people? I don't know that he would. You got a mother in tears saying he hasn't given us one word, one bit of attention. I don't know, folks. If I was the governor of a state and my citizens, my residents were being persecuted, I'll tell you what, I don't think I would have let them raid Mar-a-Lago. I think I would have called the National Guard. I'm serious. I'm serious. Over my dead body. I'm one of the biggest states in the country. Make me. Make me. I think that's the stance I would have taken. Somebody's got to have the courage to do that. The rank and file FBI agents don't have the courage. That's why this is all happening. And of course, it's our fault we let them have that much power. But if they were good people, if they were decent people, they wouldn't obey. It's like, sadly, when you had sheriffs and other police officers, police departments, depending on whether they're elected or not, you get the order from the governor to go and shut down that institution because of COVID's stupid restrictions. It was their lack of courage that carried out those orders. Can't eat unless you're in a restaurant, unless you're vaccinated. It was the willingness of the NYPD to enforce those laws. So, I mean, maybe somebody will say it's an extremist kind of thing. If you were the governor, Rich, you wouldn't let them in. No, I wouldn't. Isn't that supposed to be your duty? Yeah, rank and file were just following orders. So were the Nazis. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So there it is. Yeah. So there it is. All right. So Wednesday. More. Let's try to get a national poll. Let's do that. I'll do my best. I just personally, at this point, I don't trust him at all. I just don't. He absolutely brought up that those people basically deserved it. I mean, don't take my word for it. Go watch the video. But again, I know Kurt gets a lot of crap on Twitter, and I've known him for years. I'm telling you, I think he's sincere, and he gets a lot of crap that he doesn't deserve. He's not in the Pedro or the Bitchel or the rest of he's not like that, guys. I'm telling you. So I hope none of my followers give him an unnet. You can disagree. He'll disagree with you. He'll take shots at you. Take shots at him back. That's the name of the game. But I hope I don't see some of the stuff he gets from our own people. And he gives it to you, give it right back. That's Kurt. He's a big boy. He's he's a grown ass man. He can take it and he'll dish it out. So there we have it. I didn't see any. Let me just go through the super chats real quick. Mearsheimer, when asked what Russia ought to have done, admitted Russia had no other options as the West's agreement incapable and can't keep its promise. Totally agree, Life of Brian. This is our fault. For people who have followed me for a while, that's what I think. The West is the aggressor in this case. There is no doubt. And sadly, Kurt brought this up too. It was great. We were told it was the end of history. That's all. We shouldn't have listened to nonsense from neoliberals and neoconservatives. That was, of course, insane and highly, highly arrogant to think that somehow we were just going to be exempt from the history of realpolitik and the international system. That's crazy, but we bought it. This is a sad development because Nixon was right. Nixon's presidency did a lot of great things for this country, one of them being the ability to use China against Russia or Russia against China. They are in the same spheres of influence. It is not normal to push Russia into the arms of China. That's not the natural way in the international system. As a power rises, like China is rising, it is Russia's problem, even more so than it is our problem, because we're an insular power in another hemisphere. It is very difficult for China to attack us, all right? Not so for Russia. So it is in Russia's interest to want to balance against the rise of China. And it was a perfect opportunity. You don't have to like them. It's like you didn't have to like Stalin to help use Stalin to take out the Nazis. But that was the wise and smart thing to do. And instead, we pushed them into the arms of each other and have created a balancing coalition that we cannot balance against. We don't have the power. We don't have the latent or the raw, latent meaning economic. We don't have the power. Military, economic, nothing. Sorry, but it's true. The West is weak. The Western so-called allies are totally weak. They're not even paper tigers, because at least they don't even claim to have claws. Maybe Great Britain still does, but they are weak. They have no resolve. They have no military might. They have no economic might to even turn economic into military might. They are lost. NATO is us. That's it. So we did all this, Brian, for Finland? To add what? Finland to the ranks of NATO? And we bled Ukraine dry. If it once had a lot of resources in the, as Mearsheimer says, for every neck, you have two hands to choke. Well, we bled out a bunch of bodies in Ukraine, capable bodies. It's not even worth that anymore. We are most definitely the aggressor, and Mearsheimer is 100% correct. We have left Russia with no other choice. That is the sad reality. There are no good guys and bad guys in international relations. If you still think that there are good guys and bad guys on the different sides of conflict in the 20th and 21st century, it's naive. I'm sorry. Very naive. Let's see what we got here. There's no difference between taking advantage of battlefield conditions and deliberately taking losses to achieve that advantage. I think that's in reference to what Kurt was talking about with Ron DeSantis needing. This is where I totally disagree with Kurt. If you, in my mind, need them to win, you're never going to go against them. You owe it. You owe your victory to them. Plus, everything in his history tells me he's more of a Dan Crenshaw than he is a Donald Trump. I mean, nothing in his history tells me that he's the real deal. What it shows me is that he was very much a very typical, groomed, and Kurt knows these people. He was in the army like me. Very groomed to be, stars and stripes kind of Republican that turns into a neocon. And then he saw the Trump era, so he kind of like morphed like a chameleon into what he thought people wanted. and then hoped everyone would just forget about the coup letters to John Kerry about Ukrainian coups and stuff like that. And, and at the end of the day, when it doesn't need MAGA anymore, then you'll see what it really is about. That's in my mind, that's the history and his comments. This is something I just don't. What about Vivek Ramaswamy? He has taken Trump's policies and has not alienated Trump's voters. He's been smart about not insulting, unlike DeSantis's influencers and even part of DeSantis's campaign, insulting the majority. Stupid. Vivek has not done that. However, there are a lot of DeSantis supporters now who are starting to pivot and turn on Vivek and really start to attack him. They want you to believe he's some kind of like Klaus Schwab, George Soros plant. I don't know enough about it. I really just don't. I have heard both Jack Posobiec and Charlie Kirk interview him in the green room while I've waited to go on. I've heard his comments on and off camera, and I just don't know him well enough. He claims they gave him some award even after he declined the award, and he thinks it's very suspicious. I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't know where Vivek stands. A majority in control of all three branches. Regardless of whether I know where Vivek stands, and by the way, Matthew, it was still very smart of him not to create an enemy of the majority. A majority in control of all three branches won't matter if it's populated with McCarthy's and McConnell's or DeSantis. Kurt is wrong. Yeah, Kurt has always been about electability, Owen. And that's why, I'm telling you, I've known him for years and I bring him on because he is sincere. I know him for years. And I'm telling you, he does think you got to win. And that's always where he's coming from. I used to believe that years ago. I don't anymore because, what good is it? Tom McClintock was elected. That's great. Those pilots aren't going to get, they're not going to get their license back. People, some of you may know, some of you may not. I would like to complete my own pilot's license, and I would like to go and get my instruments, multi-engine, everything. These people, after all of this training, which is a lot, and it's very difficult for someone like me to do, even though I'm very blessed, I have a school right up the road. But it's very difficult for me to complete because there's so much training, and I'll eventually get there, but there's so much training to it. And yet, because these people refuse to get a vaccine that we now know does not work and causes all sorts of issues, they have been fired. And the bill was supposed to reinstate their licenses. So who gives a damn if Tom McClintock was reelected in CD5 if he voted with Democrats? Difference doesn't make. So over the years, I've really moved away from the electability argument. And then I've found that it's really more, in my opinion, of something the establishment has done to scare people. And I'm not saying Kurt's doing that. I think he's legit because I'm telling you, once upon a time, my God, folks, 12 years ago, I don't even know how long it's been. We were arguing, making the same case. So I know he believes it. He's not trying to gaslight anybody. Is it possible Vivek equals anyone but Ron second? Yeah. I do think that there is people who are concerned about Trump's ability to win because of these indictments. People like Kurt, but they don't like Ron DeSantis. So that's the difference. So they don't know where to go. I do think that that's there because, I just know. I know that's the case. But I think that is a big part of Vivek's rise in some of these areas. The true never Trumpers are going to bounce back and forth between like Chris Christie and Mike Pence and Ron DeSantis, some of Ron DeSantis. The thing is, though, as we can see in the Iowa poll, even in the Fox poll, like all of Ron DeSantis's voters would vote for Trump. All of them. That is not true of all Trump voters voting for Ron DeSantis, So, and I know Kurt sees that, by the way, right now. I just don't think he's seen it in so much abundance that he's convinced by it. And the conventional wisdom is still winning the day in his thought process, which is understandable. I just been polling the Trump or bust more than anybody. And I'm telling you, those people aren't going anywhere. They're just not. And I am at the point where I really think you would see millions of write-ins for Donald Trump, millions. And I think many of them wouldn't even be counted because some ballots you won't be able to, and they'll just write them in there. I'm telling you, that's going to happen. I don't know if you guys paid attention, but the guy like won in the Pacific Northwest. He won some like fireman, local fire marshal election just because it was a protest and people wrote in Donald Trump. It's crazy. This is where we're at right now. But I do understand people's concerns that normies won't vote. Again, the Tip Insights editorial, I'm going to send it out before we wrap it up. Let me post this comment to everybody in locals and YouTube. You guys should read this and really take it into consideration. Let me get to the locals comments here. Oh, thanks for having Kurt on. You know what, Tony? I'm telling you, I'm not for like not talking to people. I've known him for years. He's got a different opinion. He sees the election differently than I do. But that's all like, I don't know when that's like, he's again, not dishonest. He's being earnest. He's not like, Cardildo or whatever that guy's name is. All right. Like he's not trying to get out of his latest lawsuit. So he's getting money from backdoor to be prancing around for somebody. Like he would, like that guy would jump in a pink tutu for anyone who cut him a check. That's not Kurt. All right. And he doesn't disregard it. He doesn't disregard it. He just sees others and he's not totally convinced of it yet, that it has staying power. He doesn't disregard it. He just doesn't know if it has staying power. And what, yeah, that's a great question, Dread Robert. The Trump endorsement, does it move most Trump or bust voters? Look at Cameron right now. I told everybody that Cameron was going to have a hard time beating Andy Beshear in Kentucky. We're not there yet. We'll see how it ultimately ends. But we're talking about a Trump plus 40 state. And, Beshear would have to overperform ridiculously. And yet, I'm telling you that he's still down. Beshear has a small lead. It's not going to be as big as everyone thinks. But I think Dread Robert's right. I think that it doesn't carry over. Does it get you some? It does. But there will be people who vote, and especially in a state like Kentucky where there's Appalachia, there will be people who vote for Donald Trump and would never vote against Donald Trump, but will not vote for a candidate that Donald Trump's supporting because they are not partisans like that. They're just not, I also see it your way. I know he's much more pro-Ron on Twitter, but I don't think he came on here and made some master case for Ron DeSantis. I don't. And he gives Trump credit where he feels Trump has credit. I actually don't think. Exactly. And I hear from the last time he was on, I definitely hear some fracture, in that belief. My closing argument. Thank you. You're good conversation today. You made your points well. I just look when it comes to the Rust Belt, and I'm looking at your map. When it comes to the Rust Belt, I don't know how much more I can tell people. George Bush, exactly. He won without those Rust Belt states because he could get Colorado, either New Mexico and Virginia, and maybe even New Hampshire like he did in 2000. You needed those just to get to 270, just to get there. If you did that today, you're still going to lose. So you need one of those states. You need Wisconsin. You can't fall shy. It doesn't matter if you fall shy by 10,000 votes or 40,000 votes like George W. Bush. You cannot fall shy. And it's difficult for people to understand this, but they don't fully appreciate the feat that Donald Trump won those states. And he did it by winning voters, not because there were third parties. In a state like Pennsylvania, he was going to win without them. I got news for everybody. 2020, those third-party voters went against him and voted for Biden. That's what gave Biden a teeny little edge. That, and of course, all the fraudulent votes. But the bottom line is, you're not going to win by losing Macomb County, Michigan. No Republican but Donald Trump carries Macomb County. And then, by the way, adding an enormous margin in Monroe, even when Republicans carry Monroe, they don't carry it like Trump. And you need to do that with Macomb and Monroe to offset how badly you get your ass kicked in Oakland, which is shifted away from all Republicans, not just Donald Trump. And then you need massive margins in the Upper Peninsula and Western Michigan in order to counter the several 100,000 vote net that's going to come out of Detroit. So without Macomb and without a massive margin of Monroe, you have no chance in Michigan, period. And by the way, Tudor Dixon, go look at how many votes Tudor Dixon got. Raw votes, not percentage. How many raw votes she got for a Republican candidate. Go compare her number of votes to, say, Governor Snyder, who actually won. She lost, but she crushes Snyder with how many votes she received. But she still lost because she couldn't put together the Trump coalition, even though she got many more votes than Governor Snyder did. It's just the way it is. We've gone over Wisconsin a million times. DeSantis would lose Wisconsin by probably 6 points or more. I hate to say it, but that's just by demographics, folks. Demographics. You think I'm alone? Ohio goes back to being a battleground state without Trump on the ballot. Suffolk University just found the same thing. Then Mitchell comes out in Michigan. It's Biden +2 against Trump, but it's Biden +13. Mitchell is not a bad pollster in his state. He's always understated Trump, always, but he hasn't been as bad as like the New York Times and others that really thought that Biden was ahead in Ohio, for crying out loud. Quinnipiac, Iowa, Biden +1. Come on. All right, so there we have it. Wednesday, more. It's 2:30, so I'm going to wind up getting out of here. But don't forget, share the Public Polling Project far and wide. Even if every listener gave $1, we could poll every month, okay? So I think we've done, I don't even know. I don't want to go back and say it, but we're way behind on crowdfunding. I'm not going to lie to you. Way behind on it. I just want to poll, so we've been doing it anyway. All right, so share it, encourage people to contribute to it, and let's try to get another national in there. With that in mind, I think that's it. I will see you on, I think Laura booked me for Steve Gruber later. I think she did. All right, so then there's that, and then there's Wednesday. And I guess we just saw did you guys watch Newsmax on Sunday? I was on Gorka. I was a taped one, so I didn't know it was going to be on Wednesday, but very cool, very cool. All right, I will see you guys later. We talked about the importance of national polling still, even though people keep saying, oh, it's not important. It is important. All right, we'll talk on Wednesday. See you soon, folks. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to our guest, Kurt Schlichter, for showing up. Always a good conversation with Kurt. All the best, guys. See you in a couple days. What long time it'll be between our next rendezvous.